Hello and welcome to this week's edition of TRP News. I'm James Andre and thanks for joining me. This past week in the Trans-Pacific Partnership news, TPA, otherwise known as Fast Track, was passed by the Senate. The Senate voted 60-38 on Wednesday, approving Fast Track authority for President Obama. The authority was requested by President Obama to aid the completion of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement. Japan Economy Minister Akira Amari hopes to clinch the TPP trade deal by the end of July. That's next month, folks. The Trade Adjustment Assistance Bill, which earlier had almost become a victim of parliamentary maneuvering, was also passed as part of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. The vows have already begun from opponents of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, promising to do everything possible to prevent the adoption of the 12-nation agreement. Lost amid the overheated rhetoric of trade critics, there are two very salient points. One, the majority of Americans have refused to consider morality when it comes to their shopping habits and goods they purchase, instead shopping primarily based on price. Two, this era of expanded global trade has led to the greatest reduction of poverty worldwide in recorded history. So that's a couple of things that just get kind of left aside when people talk about all the bad things that free trade has done. Well, it has raised the overall level standard of living of millions of people around the world, including here at home. Some might think it would be odd that people call themselves progressives, yet scream in outrage that the wealthiest country in the world would provide opportunity to some of the poorest. And you hear a lot about that. Their wages are so low, we can't compete. Yet if you are a liberal or a progressive, then what is wrong with helping them elevate their wages? What is wrong with helping them have more wealth and a better economy and raising their standard of living? And again, that's part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, that the labor standards rise to the level of international labor standards from the International Labor Organization, that gives these people an opportunity to air grievances and fight for their rights and fight for better conditions that they work under. Meanwhile, as I've said before, much of the criticism about TPP has been misguided and overblown. Many have used, as I have called it, a non-issue to forward their own agendas. A report out last week details some of the money involved. While some of you were screaming about parliamentary maneuvering, about how the president would exercise his constitutional authority to negotiate a trade agreement, and I warned you that it was a distraction, over $242 million was donated to senators since 2008 by pro-trade organizations and opponents of trade. $242 million donated to senators by people interested in the outcome of the fast track debate and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Majority Leader McConnell himself received over $8 million in this time period. $8 million. And guess what? Senator Elizabeth Warren, whose rhetoric I've been critical of here, Warren topped the list of donations collected from opponents of Fast Track and the TPP. She was the largest recipient of money donated by those who are opposed to Fast Track and opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. She collected a cool $2 million. So as I told you before, people have their own agendas. There's reasons why this heated rhetoric, you receive an email and there's a donation link in it. People are raising money off of your outrage over what I called, or what someone called last week, and I quoted them, kabuki theater. This is really much ado about nothing, and again, it's a sideshow. We really need to stay focused on what's going on here. And you see one of the biggest problems that progressives have is being exacerbated right under our noses while we worry about fast track authority. People are collecting money hand over fist, just stirring the debate about it. The controversy is making people money, folks. So just keep that in mind. There's other major issues going on, and this is just a sideshow and a distraction. Also, this past week, the Islamic State, ISIS or ISIL, turned a year old. So it's been a year since this organization was formed in the aftermath of the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Last week, an ISIS spokesperson called for making the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which we are now in, a month of disasters for non-Muslims. So he wants disaster, he wants attacks, he wants terrorism, unrest for any of those who do not adhere to their particular religious ideology. ISIS continues to hold a large area of land between Syria and Iraq. Over 60 people were killed last week in ISIS terror attacks. A factory near Lyon, France, a resort in Tunisia, and a mosque in Kuwait City were all attacked. ISIS violence, however, was not limited to everyday citizens. 12 members of rival terror groups were beheaded near Damascus, Syria, by ISIS. All this comes in the wake of more U.S. troops being sent to Iraq for training and coordination, and news that the Pentagon has begun paying Syrians it hopes will join the fight against the Islamic State. It's clear that this is going to be a prolonged conflict. The ISIS has managed to hold territory, expanding in some cases, being pushed back in others. Every week we get an account. One city gained, one city lost. And as I told you before, we even have lost a U.S. service person in Syria fighting with Syrians. And so this conflict, these guys are entrenched, and now they are, in fact, people are not even calling it a terrorist organization. They have been elevated to the class of proto-state. So they are controlling this territory between Iraq and Syria, and they are not letting go. And meanwhile, we have a tepid air campaign and a timid Iraqi army and Syrian rebels attempting to push these people back. One thing we do have going for us, as I pointed out, is that these guys are so hardcore, the other terrorists are not good enough for them. So these 12 guys they beheaded were most of them were Al-Qaeda and related organizations, and that's not good enough, not the right kind of Islam for the Islamic State. So they were shaved and had their heads chopped off. 12 different terrorists by 12 other terrorists doing the beheading. So that's update on ISIS right now, ongoing situation, and they are doing everything they can to maintain their reign. Big news last week from the Supreme Court of the United States. The Supreme Court handed down 2 rulings that significantly altered the political landscape, and some have called landmark, and they are definitely significant. The court voted 5-4 in favor of allowing Americans of the same sex to marry. So it's finally happened. Same-sex marriage is the law of the land at this point, or at least it is approved by the Supreme Court. It has the SCOTUS stamp of approval. Writing for the majority in Obergefell versus Hodges, Justice Kennedy stated that marriage has evolved over time. For the dissent, Justice Scalia, who is seemingly turning out to be quite the nut job these days, called the ruling a threat to American democracy. And he's had quite a few quotes as this session of the Supreme Court has begun delivering its opinions, and they are not all on this side of sane, I don't think. So he calls same-sex marriage a threat to democracy, or at least the ruling by the court. Also, from SCOTUS last week, King v. Burwell, the court ruled in favor of the Affordable Care Act. The case was a technical challenge to the language of the health care law. Basically, there was a challenge saying a line, and I told you about this weeks ago, there was a line in the Affordable Care Act that said, in regards to subsidies and, quote, exchanges created by the state. And of course we know that not all states have created exchanges. In fact, some of the exchanges were created by the federal government, and so that creates a disparity in the application of the law. And I guess what they were saying was that it was a constitutional violation, in other words, an equal protection violation, whereas some states were exchanges were being treated differently than federal exchanges. In other words, there should be no IRS subsidy for a federal exchange because it was not part of the law. And if there was no subsidy under the federal exchanges, then they hope that would tear the whole law down. Well, there's a thing called strict constructionism when it comes to interpreting the laws versus legislative intent. I went over this with you weeks ago, and the legislative intent of this is clear, that the Congress intended that subsidies apply to all exchanges, no matter who created them. And you can split hairs or go over this as technically as you like, but the bottom line is you could say, well, the federal exchanges are actually the state exchanges, but bottom line is they went with legislative intent and said that the funding was meant to apply to all exchanges, both state and federal. So last week, many celebrated the court's ruling on same-sex marriage, and despite apocalyptic promises, no protesters or critics actually did set themselves on fire. No, that didn't actually happen. There's been some protesting and some disagreement, and some critical words from people whose name I won't mention. I told you my philosophy on that. We don't need to quote these nut jobs, these right-wing wackos, and give them airtime. Just suffice to say that they have spoken up, and they are not happy about the decision. The Texas Attorney General, however, did tell Texas county clerks that their religious beliefs may allow them to refuse to issue marriage licenses. And another ruling is due today, June 26th, on voting districts in Arizona. And I told you about this a couple of months ago, I think. In 2000, the year 2000, Arizona voters approved an independent commission for the drawing of district boundaries. So basically, Arizona, as you may know, is a red state. It's run by Republicans, and I've warned you about this before. It's not just Arizona, but if you go down into the local level and the state level, and a lot of these governments and a lot of these state legislatures, they are many Republicans holding office. It's a huge issue. That's why another reason I tell you, let's not put all our weight on who's going to get elected president. Let's also worry about who's getting elected to our state legislatures. And so the Arizona voters said that basically it's only Republicans here, and they're always drawing the districts in their favor. We need an independent bipartisan commission to draw the districts in a fair and impartial manner. So that was approved by voters, I think by something like 56%. It passed, and that commission was created. Well, a lot of the Republican politicians in that state did not like that idea, and they felt that the commission itself was leaned too Democratic or too liberal or too far away from what the Republicans would have liked. So they got the governor to fire the entire commission. So the governor complied, fired the entire commission, and unfortunately for the Republicans, the Arizona Supreme Court said that that was not allowed and reinstated all the commissioners. So the Arizona Supreme Court itself upheld the independent commission and said it was legitimate. And the challenge from the Republicans is that these people are not under the Constitution allowed to draw the boundaries. It's something, the power that cannot be transferred from the legislature. It's another technical argument which, given the decision on the Affordable Care Act, I don't think will pass. This might be a bone the Roberts Court throws, but I'm willing to bet they're going to lose this one 5-4 as well. Just because this commission is created by the state legislature and the governor, and so it seems entirely constitutional. When I say constitutional, I mean the state of Arizona Constitution. So now they are appealing their own state Supreme Court's decision to the United States Supreme Court, and that decision is due today, this week, June 26th. And that is another decision that will likely have a significant impact for years to come. And also this past week, there is news about the Iran negotiations over the Iranian nuclear power program and the P5+1 sanctions. P5+1 being the Security Council plus UN Security Council plus Germany. Sanctions against Iran to prevent them from developing a nuclear weapon or enriching uranium to the point where or uranium or any other material to the point where it can be used for a nuclear weapon, uranium or plutonium. This week brings the original deadline for an agreement on Iran's nuclear program and sanctions. And remember, I told you about this, people. It's the same thing I said about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and Fast Track, the deadline for the nuclear negotiations. None of this stuff is set in stone. None of this stuff comes from on stone tablets from the Mount. These are things that are fluid and can be changed over time. And so this is just a guideline to give the negotiators a goal to shoot for. And that deadline is this Tuesday or tomorrow, June 30th, which is the end of June. And as I told you weeks before, I doubt it would happen by that deadline. And now they're saying, no, it's not going to happen. One of the Iranian negotiators has gone back home, although they are planning to continue the talks later on this week. A senior official has said that negotiations will miss the deadline, and he said that while progress has been made, there are still unresolved issues. The overrun was also characterized as not long-term, but a matter of a few days. Negotiators are planning to stay past the deadline and continue negotiations, and it appears they hope the deal will be completed sometime next month in July. And I think I told you weeks ago that it would overrun, and I think I told you weeks ago that it likely will not happen the first week of July simply because of the Independence Day celebrations here in the United States of America. That's not going to be something that the Iranians will enjoy making those concessions during that period. So at the earliest, I would say the second week of July, maybe the third. I think the second week of July was my original prediction. So we will see if that holds to be true. So the deadline is definitely going to be passed, and the hope is that the negotiations will be completed and concluded in a matter of days, quote unquote. Whatever a matter of days is, whether it's 5 days or 5 weeks, it remains to be seen. Finally, this week, I wanted to talk a little bit about the politics of association. So, I've talked a lot about, for example, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and I've talked a lot about people being distracted and about keeping our eyes on the prize, staying focused, not buying tickets to the sideshow. And I've told you several times how I've been accused of being a shill and a proponent of job-killing trade deals. Why are you promoting this trade deal? Why are you promoting this trade deal? I'm not promoting the trade deal, people. What I'm trying to get progressives to do is understand that this trade deal is not high on the agenda. And not only that, I'm trying to get progressives to stop adopting this tactics of the nutty right wing. Stop lying about things. Stop exaggerating. Stop smearing people. This is not helpful to our cause, and not only it confuses the entire debate. And ultimately, our objective is to get sound progressive policy. And if we are lying to each other and lying to the public about what is actually happening, we are muddying the waters, and we will never actually achieve what we're trying to achieve. We will not have the proper focus. We will not have the proper facts. So I want progressives to operate on facts, not smears, innuendo, or deceptive rhetoric. I believe those kinds of the tactics are tactics of the extreme right wing, and that they are destructive, divisive, and unhelpful. So unfortunately, it appears that every day more and more progressives are adopting these dirty tactics. And I'm reading things like, if a Republican agrees with it, that's all I need to know. Okay? No, it's not all you need to know. And just because a Republican agrees with something, or a Tea Party, or I don't care who it is, just because they like an idea doesn't automatically make that idea bad. It may make it suspect, but it's not a basis for which to form a complete judgment on anything. I see things like people sharing images of Hillary Clinton with the head of Goldman Sachs. Oh, look, here's Hillary Clinton with the head of Goldman Sachs. It's a picture of two people sitting together. That doesn't, and they say, oh, that tells you everything you need to know about Hillary Clinton. It tells you nothing about Hillary Clinton. It tells you she was in the same room, sitting or standing next to someone you happen to not have a good opinion of. And you don't even probably have a well-informed opinion. You just know about the wrongdoings of the company, Goldman Sachs, and now you see the head of Goldman Sachs and you think he's dirty, a criminal, a crook, or somehow evil, and you have not based that on any facts or any knowledge or any understanding of who he is, or what he has done. And I bet you don't even know if it's the same head of Goldman Sachs that was there during the financial crisis. So, this doesn't tell you anything. That's just a smear. And the irony of these they're the same tactics that were used against Barack Obama in 2008. And now lefties and Democrats are using them on each other. And it's ridiculous. Remember how we were told we knew everything we needed to know about Barack Obama's philosophy because he went to Reverend Wright's church. It's the exact same smear, people, that you're not only adopted from the right wing back in 2008 and a little bit before, but you're now not only adopting it, you're using it against each other. And it's just not right, it's not smart, and it's not helpful. It just isn't. Okay? We can be better than that. Our country can be better than that. And we can't allow ourselves to be distracted, to be led from one headline to the next, and from one smear to the next. There are policies we all know, we all agree on, we all know need to be developed and implemented. There are political objectives that need to be adopted and made a priority. This will not happen if we allow ourselves to focus on the petty and the insignificant. Let's leave the smears and innuendo aside and focus on core progressive values. Let's work together to ensure the retention and expansion of Democrat office holders and further left politicians on national, state, and local level. Let's keep our eyes on the prize. And that's it for this week. I want to thank you for watching. I'm James Andre. Again, you can leave comments if you agree, disagree, have questions or criticism below in the video on YouTube. You can email us. There are links in the description of the video and in our post on our website, therationalprogressive.com, and or you can catch us on Facebook. And other than that, we will see you again next week.